86, partly cloudy, 58 tonight. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, high of 87. Sunday, mostly sunny, breezy, a little cooler, high of 81. Hello Kitty is making her way to Chase Field tomorrow night. Pick up your Hello Kitty bobblehead before the D-backs Dodgers game at 5:10. Visit D-backs.
Dow is 97 points right now at 18,058. The S&P is up 11 at 2102, and the NASDAQ up 20 points at 49.95. Reporting for Money Radio, I'm Ken Morgan.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday. You are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And we are a weekly show brought to you right here from Money Radio. And we're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park Studios, right here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it is April 10th. And we had a lot of good things that have happened in the healthcare industry, mainly home care, that I want to share with our listening audience. First and foremost, our show is really about how to live a healthier, happier life for our aging adult population. And if you're just tuning in, Cypress HomeCare Solutions is a employer-based home care agency. We are officially in our 21st year, and we've been enabling our aging adult population to be able to age successfully in place and have their dignity preserved and have as much independence as possible by providing caregivers that are employees of ours that act as surrogate sons and daughters. And for many that are tuning in and have listened to our show, you've heard me talk about our attempt to get legislation and to be able to provide at least some type of oversight for our aging adult population. And last week, I had shared with the audience that we had a bill that made it to the governor's desk, and it was signed into law. It was Senate Bill 1401. And basically, Senate Bill 1401 is a disclosure bill, and it enables our aging adult population to be notified whether or not that person coming into their room or into their home is a employee or a contractor. Do they have workers' comp insurance? Or do they not? Have they been criminally background checked or not? Is there somebody providing care oversight? And is there training? And these are things that consumers don't really know whether or not to ask. And we have had the benefit of having the Attorney General's office support us, and we have a lot of support from the Area Agency on Aging as well as AARP. And with that, we're going to work on getting that message out there. This was signed into law last week, and effective on July 15th, it will be actually part of the Arizona Revised Statutes laws. And those that are providing care into the home will have to provide these disclosures that I just described briefly. And if they are in violation of them, it is a Class 3 misdemeanor. And guess what? You get to spend 30 days in prison. That's not a whole lot of fun. And I've said this on our show. We've got an aging population, and with this aging population, we as a society and as a community have to safeguard them. because we have all of these diseases and maladies that happen as we age, and we owe it to them. The society that we have today, especially the society that was created by one of the greatest generations of our society and of our time, we owe it to them to safeguard them. So enough about legislation, but I wanted to bring that up. I also want to bring up something that is occurring next Thursday, and next Thursday is National Health Care Decisions Day. And what does that mean? Advanced directives. And that basically is to be able to help people know that they need to plan their wishes on how they are going to end their life and how their end of life is going to appear, if you would. It is about memorializing their wishes, and I've had a lot of guests on our show to assist our audience, and they certainly assist my clients and have assisted us in helping communicate that, is that it's okay to talk about death and dying. And it's okay to talk about it and talk about how they want to live the rest of their life. And April 16th is a national day that we want to get out there so that people know that if they've not made those plans, they need to sit down and think about them. And more importantly is have that conversation that I've also talked about on the show with their adult children, as well as their professionals, and I'm talking about CPAs and attorneys, as well as they should probably include their spiritual leaders. And I've had a rabbi and a lead pastor on our show talking about this. So with that, I want to make it very clear, it's just one day, but what we want to do is we want to bring it forward into our consciousness and know that it's a time of year that if we've not done this, we need to do it. If we've done this, we need to review it to make sure that nothing has changed, because sometimes things do change. And I think it's very appropriate that I bring into our studio a gentleman that often talks about this very issue. And he's got a vast amount of experience, and I want to just cut right to the chase, and I want to introduce to our listening audience Dr. Kevin Haselhorst. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Well, it's good to have you here on the show, and I will tell you, I took a moment to really talk about what's happened in the home care, healthcare arena in our state, which is a big deal because 29 other states have some type of regulation. In our state, which has a lot of aging adults, didn't have anything. So with the help of Senator Bardo, with the help of our Congress and our senators, as well as the Attorney General's office, we were able to get this signed into law, and it will be law July 15th. But I also, I think it's really important for our listening audience to learn a little bit about you, Dr. Haselhorst, because you've been at this for a while.
Being an emergency room doctor, what I think people are intrigued by is there are new eyes on the situation. They sort of a lot of times they've been to several doctors, or they've not gotten the answers that they look for, and they welcome the opportunity for new eyes to be put on the subject. And my topic, or my book, Wishes to Die For, is really coming at the end of life from a different perspective. Being in the emergency room, I've seen all stages of life at any given shift. And I think people appreciate, I must have seen everything. And true to form, I have seen a great deal, and I've seen a lot of things that trouble me. And part of what I'm torn between is the conversation I have with patients and the conversation I really want to have with patients. Many times I'm left to a standard of care that says the doctor says certain things, but as a person, I don't always ascribe to the things that I'm prescribing. And I think one interesting article is this idea that doctors don't die the way their patients die. And I think that's it's an interesting awareness. Is like, what is the doctor doing that I might that may not be available to me? And I think again, you're saying have people consider their wishes, but many people don't want to know what they wish for. It's like birthday wishes. Somebody comes at you, what are your wishes? And you hem-haw about what I want for my birthday. I hadn't really thought about it. And yet this end-of-life opportunity is really a dramatic time in your life that you want to have something profound to have on your list of things that you'd like to fulfill.
And you talk about a birthday, and this end-of-life conversation isn't one conversation you have with a loved one. It's a continuing conversation. It's a conversation that is sometimes painful, and it's not something that's sexy. I mean, especially when you live in a climate like Arizona, and this weekend it's going to be absolutely gorgeous, and you're going to be out hiking, you're going to be going playing golf or go out on one of the lakes. But you got to find the time to have this conversation. And I know we're coming up on a break, and I want to talk more about this with you, Dr. Haselhorst. And I want to talk about this great book that you wrote, Wishes to Die For. So with that, it's hard to believe we're down one segment, and we've got 3 more. And I really want to get into really talking about Wishes to Die For and talking about having that conversation. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And I've got Dr. Kevin Haselhorst in the studio. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Jim Gentrup, Principal Partner with Valvista Capital Management. At Valvista, we focus on small company stocks. We offer our clients over 25 years of research and portfolio management experience. Our clients, many of whom are high net worth investors and lead busy lives, entrust Valvista Capital Management to create additional wealth through small company stocks. In addition, the principals at Valvista Capital Management, unlike many money managers, have a significant portion of their assets invested alongside our clients. You should invest too, so call today at 480-646-4537. Our goal is to create long-term value and a trust-based relationship with our clients. Learn today how you can successfully invest in small company stocks with reduced volatility by calling Valvista Capital Management. The number again to call is 480-646-4537. That's 480-646-4537. You can also learn more at www.valvistacm.com. That's www.valvistacm.com.
Attention business owners. Do you have a debt that has gone uncollected or a judgment that has not been paid? Then you need to call the Andrews Law Firm today, 480-237-9756. James Andrews and his team will investigate and locate debtors' assets, including current wages, bank accounts, real property, shares of stocks, and other sizable assets. Once the court enters the judgment, the Andrews Law Team will use various tools to locate and restrain assets and income that may be applied to satisfy the judgment. Andrews Law has the ability to contact banks and the employers which can freeze the funds on deposit or wages so that they can be garnished and applied towards your judgment. If you don't have a judgment, they can help you obtain one on an outstanding balance, promissory note, bounce check, and more. Andrews Law will also draft ironclad settlement agreements with judgment debtors that will yield payments. Get the money that is owed to you and call the Andrews Law today, 480-237-9756. That's 480-237-9756, or visit andrewslawplc.com. SRP reminds you to stop, think, and remember. Never enter or swim in the canal. For more safety advice, visit srpnet.com/safety.
The money talk you love, still on 1510 AM, and now 99.3 FM. Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You, and my name is Bob Roth. I'm your host, and I have got Dr. Kevin Haselhorst here in the studio today. And we're talking about a subject, as I said before we took a break, it's not a sexy subject, but it's a subject that we all have to have with our loved ones. I've talked about it here on the show about having the conversation, and I've got a gentleman here, Dr. Haselhorst, who is having that conversation and is having that conversation every day in his ER, but also took the time to write this book about wishes to die for. And I would like to turn the mic back over to Dr. Haselhorst, and I really want you to explain to our listening audience what prompted you to write this book. Talk about a little bit about your background, because obviously your experience really drove you into saying, you know what, I want to memorialize this so that people can learn how they can choose to fulfill their end of life. So with that.
Well, part of my background, I'm from the St. Louis area. I grew up in primarily Catholic institutions from grade school through college. I went to St. Louis University for undergrad, SIU for medical school, went back to Mercy Hospital for my residency in internal medicine, began moonlighting in the emergency room, and found my niche there. I love the sort of excitement, the adrenaline, and of that experience, and sort of that those short segments of people's lives that you get in and get out very quickly, but can have very profound moments in that experience. I think the book sort of probably has always been my coming of age. This next level of intention to life, and my move from St. Louis to Arizona began with the idea that I was doing everything right. I had the 3-story home with the 2 cars in the garage. If I wasn't working, I was traveling. But there was a sense of being totally exhausted in leading this life that didn't seem like it had as much meaning to it as what I had hoped for. And I think this whole idea of success was defined for me as a child, but as an adult, I relooked at that concept of what success really means. And it's actually along the lines of retirement, where you find more time for yourself instead of doing more things for others, I guess. And coming here again at turning around the age of 40, it was a sense of reprioritizing my life. Where am I finding my heart's desire? Where do I find my spiritual connection to the world, to the universe, to people in general? I find that in my conversation with people is not when I'm talking to them as a doctor. It's when I'm talking heart to heart, and we find a connection, that I find something intuitively that they need to hear, or that resonates with them. That's when I've made a difference in their life. It's not by the prescriptions that I give them, or fulfilling necessarily every wish they want in terms of being hospitalized or tests that they think are necessary.
It's how can our own death and the death of those loved, the ones that we love, be faced with courage and awareness. And I think, one of the things that you and I have talked about at the break is dying with dignity. And you said, dying with a full heart. And what do you mean by that?
Well, I think the sense right now is where dignity means we do everything for that person. That because we love them, no holds bar. We're going to not deny them anything. But we all know that loving people to that extent declares that there's a certain lack within that person, that they need us to fulfill something within them that is missing. And when you're ill, you have a sense of vulnerability, you have a sense of emptiness, and you look for other people to fill you, but what they're giving you is a little bit more. A lot of times it's medications that make you sicker, or
right.
Things that don't necessarily serve you. So this idea of dying with a full heart is being able to cross the finish line, to say, I don't have to do this anymore, that I have a sense of completeness at this moment. And I tell you, people worry about these death panels and being denied certain things at the end of life. But there's a certain population, when I say you can go home now, we don't have to do anything more, they are elated. They walk out of that emergency room with a sense that they've done all that they have to do at this point, that the doctor gave them permission to go home. And to see those smiles on these people's faces, it's remarkable, because they come in thinking they're going to abide by the rules and do everything as the system tells them to do. And I give them permission not to have to do that anymore.
And it's interesting, because we talked before we got onto this segment. We talked about sometimes having hospice patients show up in the ER, and that is a very mixed signal, because they're on hospice because they're actively dying.
Correct.
Why are they showing up in the ER? And I think a lot of it is they've not had the conversation. They're afraid to die. And part of them wants them to come off a hospice and maybe have you as the doctor do some heroic means to prolong their life.
People don't know how to be receptive to hospice. Hospice is unconditional love, where you're actually able to abide in that setting where you don't have to be in control anymore, that you can let go of your fear, your connection to life, and given a whole different. To me, I always think it's like you board a cruise ship. And you're not, you get pampered. You don't have to worry. All your responsibilities are left in another zone.
Right.
You're totally, you're in heaven. You get a little heaven on earth. And people don't really know how to abide in that. They feel like, well, I don't deserve it. And it's almost a sense of, I don't deserve to die. And I'm like, well, then do you deserve to suffer? Where do you draw the line in that, thinking?
Going back to the dying with dignity, and we talked to someone here in the studio that has a loved one that's going through this, and I mean, you get someone that is stage 4 cancer, wherever it is, and they've been through chemotherapy, and what you're doing with chemotherapy is you're throwing lots of poison into your body, and the body is fighting, and you're killing good blood cells and you're killing the bad stuff. And it is a horrible way to live. And, you have that diagnosis and you know that you went back in and you've got stage 4. You have choices you can make. You could go through it again, or you can, like you said, you can be discharged to go home and say, I'm okay, I'm accepting of it.
So much of it is in the listening. The people will tell you exactly what they want you to tell them back if you listen carefully to what they're saying. And so when they say that they're tired or they're afraid of the chemotherapy, you have to sort of pull back from even taking that off the option, because if it creates fear, it cannot be healthy in people's experience. When people say, I ask people, because this idea of shared responsibility, you think you need to stay in the hospital, you think you can go home, where are your thoughts on this? And the people that are sure that they can go home are very, they're very adamant. They know they know that they're going home. The people that are a little uncertain, I admit to the hospital, because if you don't have that level of certainty, then I'm not going to play games with you.
Right.
I'm going to put you in the hospital because that's the standard of care. But I'm going to respect the idea that you go home if you feel like you're capable of going home, or in your heart of hearts, that's what makes sense.
No, I like that approach. I really do. And certainly the person themselves have to be ready.
Right.
They have to be ready, and it's empowering. And talk about empowerment.
Not only ready, but when they're done. So much of people never get permission to be done, and that's what I think is what I really want to emphasize in the book, is having that sense of crossing the finish line, that you're done. You're done. And I did all that I intended to do. I did 3 rounds of chemotherapy. It was not responsive. I'm done now. I don't. I won't go into that right now, but it was a fascinating CPR moment. Where are we done with CPR? Because there's a little bit of a pulse there. Do we continue, or do we say, this is her time to die? Right. We've done our 3 rounds of adrenaline. We're not going to do more rounds of adrenaline, given the fact that she's 92 years old. Why would you think that the adrenaline is going to... What is the far, far better thing that she do at 92?
Right.
It's...
And especially, when there's been lack of oxygen in the brain, and, what are you going to bring back anyway?
The question mark is there, yes.
Absolutely.
What is it that we're extending?
It's funny, we're getting ready on a break, and one of the things that I pulled out of your book, it was just before Wish 28, was the Tournament of Life. Mm-hmm. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about that Tournament of Life, and it kind of segues in what we were just talking about. So with that being said, you're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you, and we're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Airport, from the Money Radio Studios. And I've got Dr. Kevin Haselhorst in the studio today, and we're talking about his book, Wishes to Die For.
A 20-year-old Topeka man has been arrested for planning to drive a van loaded with 1,000 pounds of explosives into Fort Riley, Kansas, as part of a foiled suicide bombing. Justice correspondent Evan Perez reports on how John T. Booker caught the eye of the FBI.
He apparently attempted to join the U.S. Army in Kansas City. He was recruited, and he was scheduled to arrive for basic training in April of last year. But sometime in March, he publicly posted on Facebook the following: "I will soon be leaving you forever, so goodbye. I'm going to go wage jihad and hopes that I die."
Parts of Illinois have been declared disaster areas after tornadoes touched down yesterday, leaving at least 2 dead and others missing or injured. Search crews have been going through the rubble of homes and businesses destroyed by the twisters. Another presidential contender will emerge this weekend. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will formally announce her candidacy Sunday with the release of a campaign video on social media. I'm Ann Cates.
Looking forward to your tax refund? So are identity thieves who steal refunds by filing fraudulent tax returns. Last year alone, they stole more than an estimated $5 billion from hardworking Americans just like you. Once identity thieves get a hold of your tax forms, watch out. They know that virtually all the information they need to steal your identity and even your life savings is right there. Help protect yourself with LifeLock Ultimate Plus. LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides protection for your Social Security number, bank accounts, investments, even the equity in your home. And while no one can stop all identity theft and nobody can monitor every single business, LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides their most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If you're filing taxes this year, especially if you're filing online, get LifeLock Ultimate Plus. Visit LifeLock.com and use promo code AWARE or call and mention AWARE to save 10%. Call 800-305-2203. 800-305-2203. 800-305-2203.
We just heard about this guy who works for one of the local utility companies, and he was blasting Money Radio on his truck radio while he was up a pole. That's because he didn't mind being up a pole, but didn't want to be up the creek. No matter what you do to earn a living, you want to make the most of the money you take home and secure a future for you and your family. The experts abound here on Money Radio to help you meet those goals every day. Check them out and get in touch with them. It's a wise decision.
There's one that gets really good. Greece, Spain, Latin America, the Ukraine, ISIL, Iran, Syria, the euro, world debt at levels unimaginable even 5 years ago, Japan in crisis, the U.S. and China on the same path. Yield is getting harder to come by, so people are ramping up risk, the opposite of what most of them should be doing. Hi, this is Ken from Online Trading Academy Phoenix. Volatility is coming back into the market. After a few generally peaceful up years in the market, 2015 has already had a number of sharp up and down moves, and these are likely to continue. If you're prepared for it, volatility is opportunity. If you are not, it can quickly wipe out years of gains in your portfolio. I think this topic is so important that I'm going to personally be teaching some special one-day classes to show you how to prepare for the coming volatility. You can get free tickets by calling 8448-INCOME, but seating is very limited. Call 8448-INCOME today. That's 844-846-2663. 8448-INCOME now.
You know, they say money doesn't grow on trees, but remember, trees produce timber, and timberland as an investment has risen faster and with less volatility than the Standard & Poor's 500 index. In fact, since 1987 alone, in spite of minor losses in 2010 due to the U.S. housing slump, the NCREIF's Timberland Index has risen 15% per year compared to 9.61% for the S&P. During the Great Depression, in fact, stocks plunged 70%, yet timber gained 233%. And even in 2008, when the S&P lost 38%, the Timberland Index gained 9.5%. Nothing, of course, is guaranteed, but trees do grow every year by 4 to 8%, and they are unaffected by wars, politics, interest rates, and market crashes. Want more information on how to acquire timberland? Call my friend Alex Wilson at Maderas Futura at 855-888-6288, or go online at PreciousTimber.com. That's PreciousTimber.com.
There are lots of places to hear the latest hits, but those places won't help you make money and hang on to it. We will. It's just our way, as it has been for a quarter century. And we keep going 24 hours a day, still at 1510 a.m. and now at 99.3 FM.
Have you heard about Albertsons MyRx Care? You get prescriptions at great savings for your whole family, including pets. Discount only, not insurance. Terms and conditions apply. See pharmacy for details.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. My name is Bob Roth, and you are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We're a weekly show found right here on Money Radio, 1510 AM, 99.3 FM, straight up at noon on Fridays. And if you missed our first segment, you can catch the first two segments. You can catch them up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. I've got a button up on the top of the page, and I got one somewhere down in the middle of the page. You can catch these last two segments. You can catch these next two segments, and you can catch about 65 others that we've been broadcasting right here from Money Radio Studios for the last 16 months. So, Dr. Haselhorst, I want to get back into talking about the wishes to die for. And I'd asked you some questions before, and we were talking about dying with dignity. And, I ended the segment that we were last on talking about your book and this illustration you had. And it's a great illustration because the header is Tournament of Life. And as most of everyone knows that is listening in today, we just got done the NCAA tournament. And this thing looks just like the brackets that we just completed. And I, for one, can tell you that I did not have Duke in the finals. I did not have Kentucky either, but I did not have Wisconsin. And what a great final. And utilizing that metaphor, I would like you to explain to our listening audience, there was a purpose behind diagramming that Tournament of Life, because you have the winning bracket and you have a consolation bracket.
Totally. We're in life to win it. And we start out, everybody has the same option to potentially win life and or to feel like we're going to be champions of this existence or have some experience here that makes us feel like winners. And when we get a diagnosis like cancer or a heart attack, or we're given some other, we're taken out of that tournament. We have experienced a loss at that point in our life. And
we hope we go to the later rounds.
We do have other rounds, yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to exit in the first round. We want to get to the finals.
No, we definitely go to a consolation area. Instead of the championship bracket, we're more along the consolation bracket. And that's the important part of this conversation is what do we experience in the consolation bracket? Some people never recover from that initial loss. They never really move on to feeling like there's really anything more to have in life because I'm not in it. I can't win the tournament anymore. And yet, I think that's the moment you start playing the game. That's where you really are getting real about the situation in terms of where your values are, how you strategize what's important to you to be able to still show a sense of dignity or your ability to be recognized. And that's why I think the consolation bracket proves to be winners in some respects because there is still that chance to advance on a different realm.
And I would imagine you subscribe to that bucket list. So in that consolation round, you're getting your bucket list together and you're knocking them down one by one.
It creates a sense of awareness. And there's two sides to life, the sunny side of life and the lunar side of life. And when you get to the lunar side of life, you better start getting things in perspective. If this is important to you in life, like my mother who wanted to go to Hawaii, she never ultimately ended up going to Hawaii. And it's like you can't put out those intentions. And maybe ultimately she changed her mind. I don't really think she changed her mind. I think she settled. Yeah, and I feel like where was the planning in that prospect? And so I think the same way with your end of life scenario, when you settle for certain it being good enough, that to me is not living life. That's a complacency that I see a lot of people falling prey to. I'll do whatever they tell me to do instead of creating a life that they value.
And certainly you can write your script. And I think that's what we're talking about here. I mean, you can determine how you live the end of your life. Pre-diagnosis and after diagnosis. I mean, and that's why we're here talking about National Health Advance Directive Days. We're talking about thinking about the end in mind. Stephen Covey says that, in the 7 Habits of Effective People. You think with the end first. And I think that's what Dr. Haselhorst is saying to our listening audience, is that you need to think about how do you want to live your life, and if you become incapacitated, what's that going to look like?
Well, in the book, I define dignity as the certainty of being right. And so much of what we our belief systems about being right come from other people or come outside of ourselves. At some point, we start getting our sense of right from the inside. And that's what I really want to connect people to through this book, is my own self-awareness of how I perceive my dignity through a self-reflected, contemplative, meditative sort of practice that allows me to come to grips with certain things that I don't necessarily know how to handle, but if I take it down into the heart consciousness, I come up with much more resolution. The mind tends to get trapped in certain chaos or confusion and rights and wrongs. The heart doesn't know anything about wrong. It only knows right.
I love that perspective. Thank you. Well said, and it's right here in the book. Wishes to Die For. Got a question for you, Doc. Compression of morbidity theory. What does that mean? And what are we searching for that?
Well, the Stanford End-of-Life curriculum 20 years ago put out this message that we ought to be thinking in terms of, living well and suffering less. There's a point where, you want to do everything to maintain your health, but when your health sort of takes a turn for the worse, can you condense that period of life to a shorter period instead of a prolonged existence? And so you're not going to, unless you realize there's no value in suffering, or unless you realize there's only a limited value to suffering, you end up doing things much. I'll give the example of perhaps a diabetic who has one finger amputated. The next thing, they have a leg amputated, and there's this whittling away of their life. And self-preservation looks more like self-mutilation. And
exactly.
And I question whether or not that we're serving that person by continuing to enroll them in what we can do for them versus allowing the gangrene to take their life. And if, for my own self, I intend to die of infection. There's only 5 things you're going to die of: heart disease, lung disease, cancer, accidents, infection. I'm not at risk for most of the other things unless I get in a car accident. But for me to choose infection means every time I have an infection, I can either take it or leave it. I can either treat it or leave it to allow me to transition.
Right.
Many of these older patients need to allow their infections to allow them to die. But we're not, as a society, because we know it's reversible, we do these huge workups and treatment protocols for patients at the end of life who are infected.
And, the suffering piece, and I think that, we've talked about it here on our show, and, a lot of people are, and I talked about it with the rabbi and the pastor that was on the show, a lot of people aren't so much afraid of dying. They're afraid of the pain that is associated with dying, because it can be extremely painful. And as you just talked about, with the disease, you start doing amputations and stuff like that, there's got to be a lot of pain associated with that. And loss.
Emotionally and physically.
Yes. Dr. Haselhorst, it's hard to believe we're down 3 already. And before you know it, we're already going to be into the weekend. And you will have a wonderful weekend, as we always do here in Arizona. But we are down 3 segments, and I'm here in the studio with Dr. Haselhorst. He's an ER physician who wrote a great book called Wishes to Die For. And if you want to get the book, you can go to www.wishestodiefor.com, or you can call him at 480-907-6027 and ask for Dr. H. We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We'll be right back.
Want a good idea of what the weather's going to be when you arrive in that other city in the lower 48? The one where you have the big business meeting planned? Then give a listen each weekday morning on the Business for Breakfast show at 6:30 and 7:30. That's when certified meteorologist John Weatherby updates you with the business traveler's forecast. If there's a possibility of flight delays or cancellations, you'll have a heads up and can plan accordingly. Exclusively from Money Radio.
Retire and stay retired, safe, smart, and secure. How can you potentially avoid future losses in the stock market like the ones we've experienced in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2008? Call Anil Vanzarani and Secured Financial Solutions at 800-957-5604, extension 200, and learn about active money managers that had positive returns in those years. Listen to Anil Vanzarani on the Money Radio Show every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 a.m. to learn about the concept of the principal protected low-cost new generation annuity and why it's superior in most cases than the high-risk, high-fee variable annuity and the obsolete hybrid income annuity. Call Anil Vanzarani and Secured Financial Solutions at 800-957-5604, extension 200, to set up your complimentary strategy session. Or go online at www.theripa.com. How strong and stable are the vital signs of your financial institution? Learn about the Comdex rating score of your insurance company that your banker, broker, and insurance agent may not want you to know. Listen to Anil Vanzarani and On the Money every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 a.m. or give him a call at 800-957-5604, extension 200, to set up your complimentary strategy session today. You can also go online to www.theripa.com. That's THERIPA.com. Let Anil help you set up your secure retirement today. Don't wait. Call 800-957-5604, extension 200. Retire and stay retired. Safe, smart, and secure. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Read the prospectus for risk, fees, and charges. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
SRP reminds you to stop, think, and remember. Always watch kids around the pool. For more safety advice, visit srpnet.com/safety.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. My name is Bob Roth, and you're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I am one of the owners of Cypress HomeCare Solutions, and we've been on the air now for 16 months, bringing to our listening audience ways to live a healthier, happier life for our aging adult population. We've talked about the conversation, and today we're talking about advanced planning, advanced directives. We're talking about Dr. Haselhorst's book, Wishes to Die For. And in that vein, talking about advanced directives, it's National Healthcare Decisions Day, April 16th. We want to draw awareness to that, but I also want you to know that on April 15th, the day before, Tax Day, Dr. Haselhorst is going to be at the Changing Hands book signing in the Phoenix location at 7 p.m. So I would encourage you to go down. Where exactly is the Phoenix location?
3rd Avenue and Camelback. It's a great location. I think they opened about a year ago at Changing Hands Bookstore, and they have a great venue there with a bar set up, and it's going to be in the bigger room there, bigger space, and it's very communal. I think it should be a great opportunity.
So when you talk about a bar, you're not talking about an exercise bar. You're talking about a libations bar.
Correct.
There you go. And certainly if you're looking for libations, and even more so if you want to visit with Dr. Haselhorst, he's going to be there, and he'll be signing these books. You were very kind to give me an autographed copy. Thank you. And I've learned a lot, and I still need to learn more. And I've learned a lot here with you today. And I wanted to ask you this question. What prompted you to sit down and really write this book? Because you really put a lot into this. And I got to tell you, I mean, there's a lot of good chock full of nuts in here. And, you know, one that I love is, and we've talked about on our show, is Pre-Wish for Peace. I mean, I talked about pain and suffering, and, you know, we want there to be less of that.
Yeah, the final straw that broke the camel's back was this elderly man who was 92, gasping for breath, and he came into the emergency room and he got sedated, he got the oxygen, he was resting comfortably and was ready to transition. He had congestive heart failure. There was no prospect of him living any longer. And I walked back in the room. It was a solemn period, and the nurse and the wife were both yelling at him to breathe. And I thought, this is a sacred moment. This should be respected. And they're yelling at him. And it said, we're doing something wrong. I totally wanted to walk away from medicine at that point, because if we cannot give that man the decency to die at that moment, what are we doing here? And this whole sense of death being wrong doesn't seem right, because we're all in it to die, basically. And if we're still going to be commanded to do something when it's time to die, I think we're doing people a disservice. I think we've become crazy about this experience of dying instead of honoring it.
You know, it's funny. I said it on a previous episode. I quoted Billy Crystal from the book that he had, Still Fooling Him. It's about turning 65, and he was talking about aging and death and dying, and he was like, he compared, the fact that you think that you might be the guy that's going to slip by the bouncer and get in and be the one that will live forever. And his response is, and so did everybody else in that graveyard.
Yeah,
we're all going to get there, and the question is how. And I love that point about peace and not fighting. And I dealt with that with my own family. When my mother was passing, one of my siblings was not in town, and he wanted our mother to hold on. And my brother and I, we were there, and we knew it was time for her to go, and we gave her permission to go. We just said, you can go now. You did everything you could in raising us, and that was a hard moment for us to tell her it was okay to let go, and she did.
Yeah, I think, we know the stages of death and dying. We know about denial. We know about anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But I'm saying we don't have to go through all these stages. We can actually achieve acceptance much sooner in the process if we're willing to go through the heart to get there. And most of these other stages, we're still stuck in our mind. You don't have to. When you're beating the odds, you end up being depressed. When you're going with the flow, you can easily go from bargaining to acceptance. You don't have to go through depression. So these coping strategies are fundamental to finding your way through the heart, not necessarily getting stuck in your mindsets that say, I'm going to do it like it's intended, or like the rules say. There's a gentleman with ALS who I had a recent conversation with, and he was talking about the prospect of having a trachea put in, or perhaps becoming quadriplegic. And I'm like, well, can't you pull the plug sooner before you have the trach? Or maybe the trach allows you to pull the plug before you become quadriplegic? Is it necessary to go through each debilitating stage of ALS to get to the end? Is that how the system is set up, or can you change the system to make it work in your favor?
You mean there's not a manuscript that you're supposed to follow? And I'm saying that facetiously.
Well, there is a manuscript. We're supposed to, get CPR. We're supposed to experience cardiac arrest before we're actually ethically allowed to die.
Right.
And even at 92, you can't just collapse. We're expected to pound on your heart before you can go to the other side. I think this whole idea of what's medically necessary and what's ethically right, we need to have a serious conversation, because we're not doing it. We're not being ethically right in what we're doing medically to these people at the end of life. There's a certain point where we can say, life expectancy has ended. We don't expect more out of you.
And I think what you've left for us is an opportunity to be introspective, an opportunity to sit down and talk to our loved ones and really think about how we wish to end our lives, because we're all going to get there.
It's changed my practice of medicine, and it's going to change the way people live and die at this point. This is a milestone book if people are willing to pick it up, but it's a topic that people aren't willing to address. And I say I want to become more passive aggressive. I want to talk to people more and do less.
It's funny. I shared with you the opportunity that I had to meet Jeffrey Immelt. He's the CEO and chairman of General Electric, a multi-billion-dollar company, and has had the opportunity to be in front of President Obama not once but twice, talking about advanced directives and talking about how we shouldn't be giving federal dollars for health care if we have not had our people that are receiving them have bestowed their wishes in writing and put advance directives together. And his whole point was that he had shared with us that he was in a facility in your hometown. And in that hometown of yours, he had witnessed in a long-term care facility several members that were in there that were catatonic, that were getting dialysis multiple times a week. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, and it's important for us to memorialize our wishes. Advanced Directive Day is on the 16th. I will tell you, an education process is one that is needed in our country as well as in our community. One community in specific, La Crosse, Wisconsin. La Crosse, Wisconsin, everyone there has talked about death and dying, and 96% of the people have signed a document saying that they have bestowed and put down what their wishes are. And I think these are conversations we need to have.
And I think when you start comparing your wishes to other people, it's amazing that, well, I don't really want to do that. Now, I know I wish for that, but if they're going to, if they're not obliged to it, why am I obliged to it? And when I did my own directive, I'm Catholic, and he said it's amazing how many Catholics have different healthcare directives, and it is fascinating with people what they put forth first in terms of their priorities, or where they find their faith.
Well, you know what? It's hard to believe we're finishing up our show here, and in your ER, you see a lot of different things, and like you said, you know, there's pretty much everything you have seen, and I want to thank you for being on our show, and I want to thank you for writing this book and sharing this with our listening audience, Wishes to Die For. You can get a copy of this by going to wishestodiefor.com. You can call 480-907-6027, ask for Dr. H. And you can go to the Changing Hands of book signing on Wednesday, April 15th, down at 3rd Avenue in Camelback.
Correct.
And you can get there about 7 p.m., and Dr. Haselhorst will be there. Make it a great day. Thank you, Dr. Haselhorst.
Thank you, Bob.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit CypressHomeCare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 99.3 FM. Energy production isn't just about the black gooey stuff. It's what you do with it, how you transport it. It's about mineral acquisitions. In other words, it covers a lot of territory. Don't miss one of our newer shows on Money Radio, Energy 101 with Troy Eckert, Mondays at 12 noon. Troy brings you years of experience and talks a straight talk about today's energy business. Want to know what's really going on in the shale revolution? You'll find out on Energy 101, only from Money Radio.
Stay connected to business news, the market, and social talk with Phil Grandy and the Phil's Gang Show. Weekdays 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here on 1510 Money Radio.
Obama can't let the stock market go down. You lied about Benghazi. You lied about the AP. You lied. Stop coming out here as a salesman. What, is he nuts? Phil Grandy here. Be sure to catch the Phil's Gang Show when? Weekdays 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here on 5010 Money Radio.
Money Radio 1510
and 99.3 FM.
Is KFNN Mesa Phoenix and K257 CD Phoenix. Playing a round of golf will never feel so good as it does when you help feed a hungry child in Arizona. Join us for the St. Mary's Golf Classic, Thursday, May 7th. Dow is up 98 points now, the S&P up 11, and the NASDAQ Composite Index is up 20 points right now.
Just ahead, Money Radio brings you the latest news, business news, Arizona business news, the weather and traffic. And it all starts right now.